It's correctly, from a scientific point of view, called anecdotal. Yes?
In reference to patent, it seems to me that there's often a lifetime, a certain length of time for the patent before it becomes public property. I mean, you see this also in pharmaceuticals as an example. Now, how does this apply to patent plants?
Yes, thank you. If you didn't hear the question, patents can expire. So they're in the private domain for a short period of time to reward the scientist. And then they're in the public domain. The other aspect of it is when you patent, it means you do have to make public how you made the light bulb. And then someone else can come along and borrow that information and pay the royalty to improve the light bulb. So an argument for patents is that it does tend to get information in the public sector quicker, okay? If it works right, but with the royalty payment. What is happening with patents, and that then gets to the legal field, so we need the lawyers, and the book has a chapter on international law, is the laws have changed. So we now have the World Trade Organization, which has 20 years for all patents, doesn't matter what it is or what culture. Cultures used to vary with patents because you give a shorter patent to something that you think will be very useful. No one in the world was patenting health items. They weren't patenting them because it needed to be shared for public health. So the variety of patents are a problem to global corporations. They got one law in India, another in Zimbabwe, another in the Philippines. So they have a universal law on patents now, 20 years universal time. But the other aspect is that they can use American law to even make it longer. And let's say it's only 5 years for this particular item in American law, and it's agreed to, and if the corporation agrees to it, it's 5 years, not 20. But it's renewable. And it's renewable quite easily.
Like music.
Like music. The other aspect, which I didn't mention, is when an African farmer in the field, and by the way, they're women, okay, transform a seed and have a new variety arise. So let's say it's a new variety of sorghum, and maybe it can grow in even a drier climate, a drier ecological system than the current one. And it's a new variety, and it's recognized as a new variety. It's not patentable. What she did in the field is not patentable. You change one gene in the laboratory, it is. Because patent law is made for machines, and it comes from the 19th century. It has to be uniform, distinct, and stable. And if you crossbreed in a field, it's not uniform, distinct, and stable. And by the way, farmers don't want uniform, distinct, and stable characteristics because they want the variety to keep breeding. So what's done in the laboratory, which is our domain, our private property in the United States, is not recognized in the field across indigenous fields.
One of the things I see a problem with is most of the governments or the countries that you're talking about, especially in Africa and Southern Africa, have governments that we have problems with, to say the least. Of course, Zimbabwe being a huge example of that. So how do we help the farmer? I mean, you've got a government there that is standing in the way, to say the least. So true, they get $1 a day for the work they do. How do we get through that?
Okay, good question about the weakness of governments or just outright corruption of governments in this whole issue. It is an issue. Sometimes you could go either way. If you had a very stable, efficient government that goes along with genetically modified and with patenting, that's as dangerous as the inefficient, ineffective African governments that you're referring to. So governments are terribly problematic. And the answer to that is, and what I can speak from experience, is in Southern Africa, it's organized farmers who are trying. You notice I used the word resistance, I didn't say success. Are trying to resist this coming into their countries. And they are highly organized. And my co-author, Andrew Mashita, has a non-governmental organization in Zimbabwe. And these are farmers groups across the country in the most arid conditions, saving and reproducing their seeds in the mayhem, chaos, and killing of Zimbabwe. So one of the reasons you don't see Zimbabweans literally lying in the streets in the villages is because they're using their indigenous crops and indigenous seeds. And it's a huge success story for a country like Zimbabwe that also should get out. While we expose the horrific government, we have to honor the spirit and the inventiveness of the Zimbabwean farmer. So the quick answer is resistance within the communities against even an efficient government. South Africa is going biotech. South Africa is very much into genetically modified and patenting. And it's, so it's the opposite of Zimbabwe. And what I'm also trying to keep reminding us, it's up to us to organize here also. We need to organize, why don't we have food genetically modified labeled in the United States? It took us 30 years to get the fast food companies to let us, when we asked for, could you give us the nutrition content of this Big Mac? They now legally have to hand it to you. They don't put it on the side. But it took us 30 years to get there. Why don't we? The rest of the world thinks we're bonkers because we think we're a democracy, but we don't even know what we're eating. So for instance, if you're eating tofu, unless the tofu is organic, it is almost certainly genetically modified because about 80% of our soya is genetically modified. And we don't even know it. So the answer is the energy organizing from the local communities to make the governments behave, but it's resistance, it's not success. Yes?
Only heard the name Monsanto. Are there other companies we should be aware of?
Yes, in fact, I would, okay, first of all, why Monsanto? Because Monsanto owns about over 90%, I don't have the most recent figure, but 92, 93% of the patents for genetically modified organisms. One corporation. So that's why Monsanto keeps cropping up. But any of the large agro corporations are involved in this very much. So Arthur Daniel Midlands, Pioneer, you name it. One of the problems is that they have been merging into huge conglomerates very quickly. There are websites you can follow it on. We're down basically to 5 corporations for agribusiness. And yes, they're all very much involved in this and all very much have the ear of Vilsack. Yes?
When you went through the piracy aspects, like with buffalo, so obviously the next step with the control of this Monsanto, and through the government of the Secretary of Agriculture, is then you've got, you're going after the food source to control of people. And there's a whole lot deeper agenda that could arise from what you're saying. Just pure survival, because that it's the same as that food is the buffalo, right? It's us. So then you've got control aspects of the government in areas that prevent freedom of everything.
Yes. And we have to congratulate ourselves. The largest growing agricultural sector in the United States for about the last 5 years now is organic agriculture. And that's you and me. So it's not just our votes, it is our dollar votes. And yes, organic food is ridiculously expensive. I go to New Frontiers too. But I look at it, if you aren't into it, start with the citrus fruits. A banana that's not organic is full of pesticides. You might look at a non-organic banana and call it a cancer stick, okay, like a cigarette. So start with a few organic fruits. And I also talk to this way with university students who don't have a lot of money. Go buy 2 apples. Don't buy Sam's, 20 pounds of apples, because I let a 20-pound bag of apple go bad. The other aspect is if you have some disposable income, use it on organic food. And I am in contact with organic farmers in the United States. I'm going up to Seattle in July to work with an organic, the whole organic community. As you know, the Northwest has been doing it for 40 years. The organic farmers say that we are holding the line on the law, that if it's labeled organic, it is still organic. Because that's the other thing we have to watch. As organic food shows up in Safeway and Walmart, they're gonna diminish the meaning of the label. But the organic farmers are saying it's holding. So vote with your consumer dollar, as you're saying, and it's about us and it's about what we consume. Did you, go ahead, yes, please.
Gardens for Humanity is right now leading an agricultural renaissance in Bertie Valley. That since World War II, the last 60 years, we haven't been the breadbasket of northern Arizona, but we are moving to return there.
You do feed us, yes.
Yes, so support the Sedona Farmers Market tomorrow.
Yes.
Chino Valley and all of Yavapai County growers. And we want to ask those growers, and if you're there, ask them, how can we be your best customer? And really support and honor them in words as well as
Well, I'd like everybody to thank Carol for coming. I think it was absolutely fabulous.